So that's really the challenge to you as a group, is to continue doing the study, to do the study that you're doing. One of the things I've talked to Tom about sometimes is, I see fellows that are posting on Golf Club Atlas that really aren't transferring themselves back in history enough to put themselves in the shoes of the architect at the time he was doing this work. When he couldn't travel by an airplane, he couldn't get anywhere quickly. He was going by train or by automobile, and was spending a few days on site. Sometimes the golf courses took a long time to build, and the architect couldn't really stay involved. But you really have to understand the motivation of the architects in those days. I mean, in a sense, what they were trying to do is just spread this great game of golf. And some were more talented than others, maybe 6 or 7 really talented architects 100 years ago. And they evolved a lot. I mean, if you look at Ross's work from when he began to do this work in about 1901 until he died in 1948, there's an enormous change in his work. We talked about Vincent van Gogh earlier, and Van Gogh, as we say in America. If you looked at it, the work he did as a young man, he died when he was 35. If you look at his early work, I mean, it's all brown and grays. The palette is so subdued, and by the end of his career, I mean, he's esteemed as a brilliant colorist. I was telling Tom, he painted some of these masterpieces in hours. He would paint paintings, 2 or 3 paintings a day, that now are worth millions of dollars. I mean, he would paint in a frenzy. But so anyway, that's talking about things that aren't related to golf architecture. Although the point really is that he became a better artist because he studied Cézanne and other impressionists, and so it changed his work. But you really as a critic of golf architecture or students of golf architecture, which I consider all of us to be, you have to try to go back and put yourself in the shoes of Bill Flynn or Donald Ross or Mackenzie at the time, and look at how difficult his life was. One of the arguments I have with Tom McWoods is that I don't think many of the architects of the time that he thinks were all involved in the arts and crafts movement were even educated enough to understand arts and crafts. Most of these guys had not gotten any further than grade school. Mackenzie, of course, did, but not too many of them, you see.
Ron, I got a question for you. When you were talking about the early designs and getting into the mind of the architect, can you talk a little bit about like the Aronimink project, where I've read things relative to your decisions about as-built versus the plans, and then what you're saying, if Ross was a person that wanted people to build to what he had on a piece of paper, or how did it relate to what actually got built? He wasn't standing around there.
I've almost never visited a Ross course that was built precisely to his drawings, and in many cases they vary, significantly. In a sense, I was at Oyster Harbor recently. They were talking to me about doing some work, and I probably would not even call them back because they were so enamored by their greens and how great they are. And I was, as I was walking in the field, I see putting surfaces that are 90 feet wide and were built 60 feet wide, So how am I going to get them to do the right thing if they love a 60-foot wide green and he wanted it 90 feet wide, So there's a big variation there. At Aronimink, the decision I made, there were really over 200 bunkers on the golf course as it was built, based on the aerials from the Hagley Museum, the Dalen collection. And yet, I felt like today that was just a hard sell. It didn't make sense to me. And then, I had all of Ross's drawings, which are probably as good a set of drawings as he's ever done, that indicated to me that most of those drawings had been broken up into sets of 2 and 3 hazards, pits, so to speak, So
Ross's bunkers were singles, not singles.
Yeah, large, beautiful individual. Yes.
Do you think some of that might have been functional for egress and ingress?
I don't know because I kind of sort of maybe blame it on J.B. McGovern, who was a member.
He did it.
And I kind of my feeling that he probably was responsible for it because I've done other work that McGovern did that had double and triple pits where there maybe one was necessary.
Is a similar in that there's clusters of bunkers. And,
Right.
and in your restoration work there, you've done some of them to that original scale.
Right.
One of the questions I had related to that is some of the decisions you have to make in some of the restorations are, at what point do you decide that maybe what's there isn't worth restoring or could be improved? And at Jeffersonville, you know, we've looked at old aerials that some of the land that you had to work with wasn't there originally. So what's there as a golf course today is frankly better than what it was when Donald Ross or J.B. McGovern left it some time ago. But I would think that would have to be a conscious decision on your part to divert from a pure restoration. And I guess what are some of the factors that
Well,
go into that decision?
yeah, that's a good question. It is a conscious decision, but you know, I mean, believe me, I don't do it with a it doesn't my ego doesn't swell because of it. I mean, I just try to do what I think is right, and you know, will be a better golf course today than it probably was when I first walked onto the property. But I mean, you know, I have an enormous respect for the architect. I've restored some of Rayner's courses. I'm involved with a couple of his courses right now, and a couple of Flint courses in Tillinghast and so forth. You know, so I always, you know, I try to study them as much as I can, and you all are helpful in that respect to me, frankly. But you know, that's a decision that you struggle with, and I read the word. I hate buzzwords in golf architecture, like as I mentioned, like risk reward and these things. I don't and what's the one going around on golf course now? Playability. You know, I mean, don't say that in front of me when I'm on a golf course. You know, because to me it's just completely meaningless. It's up to the individual's interpretation. And clients have seen me get a little angry about that, you know, because they've taken me out and said, you know, Ron, now in this particular situation, if a guy hits a ball here, you know, we feel like the playability is, you know, maybe a little bit over the top or something, maybe a little too difficult. I mean, you know, every great golf course has some controversy. And every great golf course has some holes on it that don't suit your particular game, whether you're Tiger Woods or any other, you know,
So
50 handicap.
philosophically, what are you proposing? Sort of individuality, freedom, anything other than standardization, or people getting a green chairman getting his own way?
No, not. My main thrust in golf architecture would be to, you know, I guess what irritates me the most is the lack of education on the part of most of the contemporary architects. Really, you know, and I mean, I just don't. Yeah, I don't think they've gone to school. So I think it's readily apparent when you look at their work. You know, so I mean, I don't really go look at their work. That's how I keep my hair from getting gray.
Mission accomplished. No more is going to be gray.